Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kiran Bendigeri from Grafosyss IAS. In this video, let's look at 6th standard history book. In this, we are going to cover all these chapters: what, where, how, and when, on the trial of the earliest people, from gathering to growing food in the earliest cities, what books and burials tells us, kingdoms, kings, and an early republic, new questions and ideas, Ashoka, the emperor who gave up war, vital villages, thriving towns, traders, kings and pilgrims, new empires and kingdoms, buildings, paintings and books. The first chapter: what, where, how and when. Yesterday you could listen to the radio, watch television, read a newspaper. If it is about yesterday, if we want to know about yesterday, we could listen to the radio, television, newspaper, magazine, sort of that. If it is about last year, we can ask somebody who remembers. What if it is about long ago? What people ate, the kinds of clothes they wore, the houses in which they lived. If we want to know all about these things, how to study about it. Furthermore, the lives of hunters, herders, farmers, rulers, merchants, priests, craftspersons, artists, musicians and scientists. People have lived along the banks of this river for several 100,000 years. Some of the earliest people who lived here were skilled gatherers. There are many rivers all around the world, like Ganga, Brahmaputra or Kaveri. People have lived here since many thousand years, and they were also skilled gatherers. Gatherers means those people who collect vegetables, fruits, sort of things. They knew about the vast wealth of plants in the surrounding forests and collected roots, fruits and other forest produce for their food. They also hunted animals. Some of the areas where women and men first began to grow crops such as wheat and barley about 8,000 years ago. People also began rearing animals like sheep, goat and cattle, and lived in villages. So we have to remember 8,000 years ago. So 8,000 years ago they started growing these crops, wheat and barley, and they also began rearing sheep, goat and cattle, and also lived in villages. It means they used to live in groups. On this India map, let's have a look at the important rivers. Here western side comes the Indus. This is the main river, and here comes eastern side Ganga and Brahmaputra, and in Orissa Mahanadi, Narmada and Tapti, Godavari, Krishna, Pennar and Kaveri. These are main rivers, main important rivers, and here there are tributaries. Tributaries means these are the small rivers which are going to join main river, that is the Indus. Kabul River, Jhelum, Chena, Ravi, Beas, Sutlej. These are the tributaries which are going to join Indus, and here Yamuna, Godavari, Son, these are the small rivers which are going to join Ganga, and there are several for Brahmaputra also. We are going to see about it later, and we have to remember Narmada and Tapti, where it flows in between Vindhyas and Satpura, and Mahanadi, it joins sea at Orissa coast. Godavari and Krishna, it joins sea at Andhra. Tungabhadra is tributary of Krishna river, and Kaveri, which originates at Karnataka and join sea at Tamil Nadu coast. And let's also look at other things also. Kirtihar ranges, Sulaiman, Garo Hills. At the east, there is Bay of Bengal, and at the west, Arabian Sea, and Lakshadweep, and here comes the Sri Lanka and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We are going to repeat map reading in upcoming videos also. The places where rice was first grown are to the north of the Vindhyas. About 4700 years ago, some of the earliest cities flourished on the banks of these rivers. Later, about 2500 years ago, cities developed on the banks of the Ganga and its tributaries, and along the sea coasts. About 4700 years ago, cities flourished on the western side of India. Later, about 2500 years ago, cities developed on the banks of the Ganga and its tributaries. It means eastern part of India. So you have to remember 4700, 2500, first west and later east. In ancient times, the area along these rivers to the south of the Ganga was known as Magadha. Its rulers were very powerful and set up a large kingdom. Kingdoms were set up in other parts of the country as well. The area which is south of the Ganga was known as Magadha, and it was ruled by very powerful, famous kings. We are going to study about it in upcoming videos. People traveled from one part of the subcontinent to another. The hills and high mountains, including the Himalayas, deserts, rivers and seas, made journeys dangerous at times, but never impossible. So men and women moved in search of livelihood, as also to escape from natural disasters like floods or droughts. Sometimes men marched in armies, conquering others' lands. Besides, merchants traveled with caravans or ships, carrying valuable goods from place to place. And religious teachers walked from village to village, town to town, stopping to offer instruction and advice on the way. Finally, some people perhaps traveled driven by a spirit of adventure, wanting to discover new and exciting places. All these lead to the sharing of ideas between people. In this paragraph, we can see why people traveled from one place to another place. Even though journey was so dangerous at that time due to Himalayas, deserts, rivers and seas. First point is men and women traveled in search of livelihood and also to escape from natural disasters like floods or droughts. Second point is to conquer others' lands. Third point is merchants traveled to trade. And third point is religious teachers who traveled to preach their religion. Finally, people traveled for the sake of adventure to discover new and exciting places. Hills, mountains and seas form the natural frontiers of the subcontinent. People from across the frontiers also came into the subcontinent and settled here. Hills, mountains and seas were the natural boundaries or borders, we can say, of the subcontinent. These movements of people enriched our cultural traditions. People have shared new ways of carving stone, composing music, and even cooking food over several hundreds of years. People traveled, due to which there were exchange of cultural traditions. Traditions in the sense new way of carving stone or composing music and even cooking food, etc. Names of the land. Two of the words we often use for our country are India and Bharat. The word India comes from the Indus, called Sindhu in Sanskrit. We can see Indus river at the eastern part of India, and the word India derives from that Indus river, and it is also called as Sindhu in Sanskrit. The Iranians and the Greeks who came through the northwest about 2500 years ago and were familiar with the Indus called it the Hindus or the Indos, and the land to the east of the river was called India. About 2500 years ago, Iranians and Greeks came to the northwest part of our India, and they called the eastern part of Indus river as India and the people as Hindus. The name Bharata was used for a group of people who lived in the northwest and who are mentioned in the Rig Veda, the earliest composition in Sanskrit, dated to about 3500 years ago. Later it was used for the country. The group of people who lived in the northwest were called as Bharata, and it is also mentioned in Rig Veda. Rig Veda is one among the several Vedas, and it was written in Sanskrit, and it is about 3500 years ago. Finding out about the past. There are several ways of finding out about the past. One is to search for and read books that were written long ago. These are called manuscripts because they were written by hand. This comes from the Latin word manu, meaning hand. These were usually written on palm leaf or on the specially prepared bark of a tree known as the birch, which grows in the Himalayas. So how do we know about all these things which we read just now? So we can know about all these things through books, which were called as manuscripts. Manuscripts means written by hand. The script written by hand. Manu means it is a Latin word, hand, and these were written on palm leaf or on the specially prepared bark, which is known as birch, which grows in the Himalayas. So we are starting from northwestern part. So in this chapter we are mostly concentrating on northwestern part. Later we will come to eastern part of India. Okay, so what is birch leaf? Birch leaf looks like this. So manuscript is written on these kind of leaves, which is naturally grown in Himalayan part. Over the years, many manuscripts were eaten away by insects. Some were destroyed, but many have survived, often preserved in temples and monasteries. These books dealt with all kinds of subjects: religious beliefs and practices, the lives of kings, medicine and science. Besides, there were epics, poems, plays. Many of these were written in Sanskrit, others were in Prakrit, languages used by ordinary people, and Tamil. So in this paragraph we can derive some points like what were the old languages: Sanskrit, Prakrit and Tamil. Sanskrit was used by elite class of people, and Prakrit was used by ordinary people. And what are the things written on palm leaves or birch? So it included many kinds of subject like religious beliefs, practices, and the lifestyle of kings, medicine and science, and they also used to write epics, poems, plays, etc. Many of these things were destroyed or eaten away by insects. And where these are stored? These are stored in temples and monasteries, because they were the safe havens for these kind of things. We can also study inscriptions. These are writings on relatively hard surfaces such as stone or metal. Sometimes kings got their orders inscribed so that people could see, read and obey them. There are other kinds of inscriptions as well, where men and women, including kings and queens, recorded what they did. For example, kings often kept records of victories in battle. We can able to know about history by reading books and also inscriptions. Inscriptions means which are written on hard surfaces like stone and metal. Kings used to order inscribe so that people can able to see, read and obey them, and also about their lifestyles and also about their victories in battle. We can able to see many of the inscriptions from old temples on the surface of temples, like that. A page from a palm leaf manuscript. This manuscript was written about 1,000 years ago. The palm leaves were cut into pages and tied together to make books. To see a birch bark manuscript. So this is one example of palm leaf manuscript. There are holes, and these are tied through a string to make it one book. So this is one of the birch bark manuscript, the same thing what we saw. There were many other things that were made and used in the past. Those who study these objects are called archaeologists. They study the remains of buildings made of stone and brick, paintings and sculpture. They also explore and excavate, dig under the surface of the earth, which is the definition for excavate, to find tools, weapons, pots, pans, ornaments and coins. Some of these objects may be made of stone, others of bone, baked clay or metal. Objects that are made of hard, imperishable substances usually survive for a long time. So the people who do research or study on these kind of objects or subjects are called archaeologists. They study about brick, paintings and sculpture. Because of these kind of people, we can able to know about Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, the oldest civilizations and all, Egyptian civilization, which we are going to study in upcoming videos. And these people dig the surface of the earth to find what kind of tools, weapons, pots, ornaments, coins, and what was their lifestyle. They try to decipher the things which are written on bones or clay or inscription on metals, sort of things. An old inscription. This inscription dates to about 2250 years ago and was found in Kandahar, present-day Afghanistan. It was written on the orders of a ruler named Ashoka. When we write anything, we use a script. Scripts consist of letters or signs. When we read what is written or speak, we use a language. This inscription was written in two different scripts and languages, Greek and Aramaic, which were used in this area. So this is the inscription which is written on the orders of a ruler named Ashoka. Ashoka was a great ruler, and it is dated to about 2250 years ago. So Ashoka lived at that point of time. So it is written in two different scripts and languages, that is Greek and Aramaic. Remember, it is found in Kandahar, Afghanistan. So you know where is Afghanistan. Afghanistan, these are Kandahar inscriptions, and Kandahar comes here. Yeah, here is the India. West to India there is Pakistan, and beside Pakistan there is Afghanistan. So, and the inscription found here is written in Greek and Aramaic, and remember, it is not in Sanskrit or Prakrit. It is in Greek and Aramaic. And if we go further west side, here comes the Greece, and above Afghanistan there is small country named Armenia. So from that we can able to find out in which language it was written. A pot from an old city. Pots like these were used about 4700 years ago. An old silver coins such as this one were used in use from about 2500 years ago. So pots were first used, and later comes the coins. Coins were used instead of barter system as a currency, and as we can guess, pots were the basic items. So these were used 4700 years ago, and later comes the coins. These were used around 2500 years ago. These are the coins, and this is the pot. Archaeologists also look for bones of animals, birds and fish to find out what people ate in the past. Plant remains survive far more rarely. If seeds of grain or pieces of wood have been burnt, they survive in a charred form. So archaeologists not only look for these scripts, they also look for animals, birds and fish bones, and also they can able to predict what kind of food the people used to consume. If seeds are burnt at that time, they are available in charred form. Historians, that is, scholars who study the past, often use the word source to refer to the information found from manuscripts, inscriptions and archaeology. Once sources are found, learning about the past becomes an adventure, as we reconstruct it bit by bit. So historians and archaeologists are like detectives who use all these sources like clues to find out about our past. So let's take example of Harappa. So this place was excavated by railway engineers who wanted to lay the railway line. There they found abundant amount of bricks. So they informed this thing to archaeologists. So archaeologists visited that spot and they found many things by excavating furthermore. So we can say Harappa is a source. So like Harappa, there are many places where we have located manuscripts, inscriptions and archaeology. Archaeologists study these kind of things and find out about our past. One past or many. We have used the word past in plural to draw attention to the fact that the past was different for different groups of people. For example, the lives of herders or farmers were different from those of kings and queens. The lives of merchants were different from those of crafts persons and so on. Also, as is true even today, people followed different practices and customs in different parts of the country. For example, today most people living in the Andaman Islands get their own food by fishing, hunting and collecting forest produce. By contrast, most people living in cities depend on others for supplies of food. Differences such as these existed in the past as well. So we are using pasts instead of past. Past is a singular form, past is a plural form. Why past? Because there were many group of people, there were many community of people. It may be of traders, it may be of ordinary person, it may be of craft persons, or king or queen. Everyone had different lifestyles, and also if we go to other locations, other places of part of other places of a country, then we can find a different kind of traditions, different lifestyles. For example, even in Andaman if we go there, there are some islands. There live some kind of some tribal people. They have their own lifestyles. So they gather their own food, and they hunt animals for food. They live in jungle. But here we have a different lifestyle. We depend on others, like farmers, for supplies of food. In the same way, the differences were existed in the past as well. Besides, there is another kind of difference. We know a great deal about kings and the battles they fought because they kept records of their victories. Generally, ordinary people such as hunters, fishing folk, gatherers, farmers, or herders did not keep records of what they did. While archaeology helps us to find about their lives, there is much that remains unknown. So we don't know many more things also, because usually ordinary citizens, ordinary people, they won't keep any record. Even now, if there is merchants and government people keep the records, but not the ordinary people. So the same thing happened in the past too. So we don't know many things about ordinary people. What do dates mean? These years are counted from the date generally assigned to the birth of Jesus Christ, the founder of Christianity. So 2000 means 2000 years after the birth of Christ. All dates before the birth of Christ are counted backwards and usually have the letters BC added on. In this book, we will refer to dates going back from the present, using 2000 as our starting point. Jesus Christ is the founder of Christianity. His birth year is used as a reference year from which we are going to assign our date. BC means before Christ. Letters with dates. You will sometimes find AD before dates. This stands for two Latin words, Anno Domini, meaning in the year of the Lord. So 2005 can also be written as AD 2005. So it is after Anno Domini. Sometimes CE is used instead of AD and BCE instead of BC. The letters CE stands for Common Era. CE is Common Era. BCE means before Common Era. So it's very simple. And sometimes the letters BP meaning before present are used. So these are the things we have to remember. BC means what, AD means what, and CE means what, BC means what. These are the things which are used in further chapters. Elsewhere, we have seen that inscriptions are written on hard surfaces. Many of these were written several hundreds of years ago. All inscriptions contain both scripts and languages. Languages which were used as well as scripts have changed over time. So we have read about inscriptions, and inscriptions contain scripts and languages. A language is a medium. Script is the way we write. For example, we can write Kannada language in English script. So how do scholars understand what was written? This can be done through a process known as decipherment. the process which we can able to understand the script what it is written. It is called decipherment. So we write A, B, C, D and all in English. In those days they used to use the shape of bird or the shape of a particular animal as some letter or any sign sort of that to write a letter. So these kind of things are understood and it is converted into the source of information. It is called as decipherment. One of the most famous stories of decipherment comes from Egypt, a country in North Africa, where there were kings and queens about 5000 years ago. Rosetta is a town on the north coast of Egypt, and here an inscribed stone was found, which contained inscriptions in 3 different languages and scripts, Greek and 2 forms of Egyptian. Scholars who could read Greek figured out that the names of kings and queens were enclosed in a little frame called a cartouche. They then placed the Greek and the Egyptian signs side by side and identified the sounds for which the Egyptian letters stood. Egypt is a country which is at the northern part of African continent. Before 5000 years ago, there were kings and queens, and from that era archaeologists found an inscribed stone which is written in Greek and also 2 forms of Egyptian, and it was enclosed in a little frame called cartouche. Cartouche means these kind of things, a card, tablet or drawing representing a scroll with rolled up ends. So these kind of things. So here we can see cartouche. Okay, and it was at Rosetta town. Rosetta town is at northern part of Egypt. Here comes Egypt, and Rosetta is northern part of Egypt. And we have to remember some important dates. The beginning of agriculture, it was started at 8000 years ago. The first cities on the Indus, 4700 years ago. Cities in the Ganga Valley, a big kingdom in Magadha, 2500 years ago. The present 2000 AD or CE. So Anno Domini or Common Era. So we can remember. We can also find the fact that the first city was started at Indus, it means northwestern part. Later cities were formed at Ganga Valley, and southern part of Ganga Valley is Magadha at 2500 years ago. And agriculture, which was started very early, that is 8000 years ago. So that's all for now. Thank you.